Hey. And we're in. Good evening. I gave him out about a 35 minutes notice, roughly, on this one. And so we're going to press through on all the thing. What is that? Okay, no, nope, nope. Let me actually turn that off and turn that down. That'll do. Okay. And this is it. We were right here, I think. Let me open this up. That looks about right. Yeah. All right. So we're going to pick up right here. The rabbis taught. That's where we're going to get things started. Hope you guys have been tuning in. I've been making all sorts of statements of the controversial. The ups and downs, the ins and outs, the lefts and rights of the whole darn thing. And people just need to look and see what something is and what something isn't, and ask you, has enough time gone by to ask yourself, are these people really one thing or the other? Right? You know, this gets me to my point about the issue of what Iran and the Ayatollah is, the issue of what Marina Abramovich is, and all that. Those are my two thoughts on my mind today. And I kind of, it's all about that time given, right? And ultimately, think about it in terms of who the hell is your good guy, who the hell is your bad guy of your time, right? And it's like the ulterior motives of war that people are talking about, that it is, almost none of it seems to matter to me. I mean, like, I'm hearing you, but I'm also looking at it, I'm just like, I'm pretty sure the human condition in the Middle East had been completely abysmal for every single year for forever, because the Middle East has not gone through kind times since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And we act like protesting war can stop war. If two people are going to fucking fight, they're going to fight. And some of them are being encouraged by all the right people to do so. So then you have to ask about who and what you are, sitting there bitching and complaining about a thing you don't want to happen, and you don't know how to further the power of what you can know. And a lot of people, I don't think, have learned a goddamn thing about what you can know about the Middle East. And so you're perpetually stuck on their timeline, where life moves really slow, and it's still the 90s. Like, the people at CNN, they still think it's the 90s. They like all the people that trust them in the way that they have enjoyed the trust of in that period of time. And the Clintons are CNN. Clinton News Net. It really is. If you go back and you look at Ted Turner and the Clintons, for fuck's sake. All right, let's go. The rabbis taught, although it is written, Deuteronomy 24:8, take heed in the plague of leprosy, which signifies that the leprous spot must not be cut But if the white spots, the symptom of leprosy, show itself on the member to be circumcised, it may be cut. Whether the member be circumcised at the prescribed time or afterwards. A biblical festival must not be violated on account of circumcision unless it happened to be the 8th day, precisely the prescribed time. Whence do we adduce these two ordinances? From the teachings of the rabbis as follows. The first one is based on the verse Leviticus 12:3, and on the 8th day shall the flesh of his foreskin be circumcised. The order is imperative regardless of whether the member be leprous or not. Whence do we know this? Perhaps it means to say that only the healthy flesh of the foreskin be circumcised. Nay, it could say merely the foreskin, but it says expressly the flesh of the foreskin, meaning that even if the flesh be leprous, it should also be circumcised. What need is there of a special verse for this purpose? During the circumcision, no intention to cut leprous flesh exists. Hence, if it be done, it is done unintentionally. An unintentional act does not involve culpability. Said Abai, the verse is used here to counteract the opinion of Ad Yehuda, who holds that an act committed unintentionally also involves culpability. Rabbah said, the verse must be used even if the opinion of Simon be adhered to, who holds that an act committed unintentionally does not involve culpability, for in the case it is different. The act committed here is like the one where a man would behead another and still claim no intention to kill him, and when circumcising the flesh of the foreskin, it there be a leprous sore, one cannot help but cut it. This even Simon admits would involve culpability were it not for that exonerating verse. Does Rabbah alone hold thus? Have we not learned somewhere that Abai and Rab both agree that Simon declares even an unintentional act, which is, however, like the case of one beheading another without the intention to kill him, to be prohibited? After Abai had heard Rabbah's explanation, he accepted it. I wonder what the Talmud would have been if Hillel didn't show up and start arguing with Shammai. And how the hell did Hillel earn, like, the in as the viable to Shammai? Especially because his story is based on the outsiderism of it all. Ooh. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, today I was late because I was trying to pick a band, to be honest. So it took me a hot minute. And so I went with, I believe this is, it looks like it says Aeon of Disease, but it kind of looks like it says Helger of Disease. Nah, Edge or no, or is the band Artifacts? No, Artifacts is the name of a song. Yeah, no, it's the album is Edge of Purgatory, and I don't know why it looks like it says Hilger on the YouTube, because it looks like it says Aeon on the album cover. I don't know. It's confusing me. I picked it randomly. I think they're Brazilian. The second ordinance mentioned is according to Rabbah, based on the verse in Exodus 12:16. No manner of work shall be done on them, save what is eaten by every man, that only may be prepared by you. That stands for circumcision only in its prescribed time, but not for preparation for it, and only stands as a prohibition not to perform the rite unless it be the prescribed time. Rashi, however, said no special verse is needed for this, for a festival is referred to in Leviticus 13:32 as a Sabbath of rest shall it be unto you. Hence it is a positive commandment, and the verse stated immediately before this is a negative commandment. Thus, a festival is covered by both a positive and negative commandment, while circumcision is covered by a positive commandment. Only in one positive commandment cannot supersede a joint positive and negative commandment. A rule was laid down by Ar Akiba, set Ar Yehuda in the name of Rab. The halakha, according to Ar Akiba, prevails. We have learned also in the matter of Passover sacrifices to the same effect, that every act of labor that can be performed on the day before Sabbath must not supersede the due observance of Sabbath, but the killing of the sacrifice, which cannot be done on the day before Sabbath, does supersede the due observance of Sabbath. And Ar Yehuda declared also in the name of Rab that the halakha according to Ar Akiba prevails. It is necessary that he should so instruct us at both times, because if he instructed only as concerns circumcision, we might assume that where sacrifices for the Passover are concerned, the preparations which could have been made on the day before Sabbath, but were not, would supersede the due observance of the Sabbath. Because failure to bring that sacrifice would involve the punishment of karath, being cut off, while failure in circumcision would not involve karath, if not performing at the right time. And on the other hand, had he instructed us only as concerns sacrifices for the Passover, we might assume that the Sabbath could be violated if the acts necessary for circumcision, which could have been performed on the day before, were not, for the reason that the covenant regarding circumcision is mentioned 13 times in, that's obviously Torah with a misspelling, and is in consequence regarded as a 13-fold commandment, which must, under all circumstances, be observed. Hence, the necessity of the twofold instruction. Under all circumstances, all laws for circumcision must not be circumvented. Okay, I just wanted to say circum like a bunch of fucking times redundantly. Okay, Mishnah. One may perform everything necessary for circumcision on the Sabbath, as circumcising, tearing open, sucking out the blood, you don't say, applying a plaster of caraway seed. If the latter had not been ground before the Sabbath, one may masticate it with the teeth and then apply it. If one had not mixed wine with oil before the Sabbath, he may apply each separately. One must not prepare an actual bandage on the Sabbath, but may apply an old piece of linen, and in such had not been prepared before the Sabbath, the circumciser may bring it with him, tied around his finger, and even from another courtyard. Gemara. Let us see. The Mishnah enumerates all the acts necessary for the performance of the rite of circumcision. Why then does it commence by saying everything necessary for circumcision and then proceed to detail everything? What act is there that has not been enumerated? The Mishnah means to include what was taught us by the rabbis as follows. The circumciser, while engaged in finishing the circumcision, if noticing that excrescines still remain on the gland, whether they are of a nature which make the circumcision invalid, or such as do not make it invalid, may remove them. But if he had already finished and put up his instruments, if excrescenes which make the circumcision invalid remain, he may remove them. But if they do not make the circumcision invalid, he must not remove them. Hence, by stating everything that is necessary, etc., the Mishnah means to include that it is permitted even to remove excrescenes which do not make the circumcision invalid, provided the operator had not already finished and put up his instruments. You can understand why people do not want to have regulators breathing down their neck. Right? This is why people don't like bureaucrats. You're trying to get a very simple thing done, and on a technicality that feels arbitrary, even though it definitely isn't and is not treated as arbitrary by the bureaucrat, because they really want to pretend that the people that pass this law believe it, so they can justify how much they love being bureaucrats, bossing people around on these little minor bullshit particularities, are just going to prevent you from doing a good job. And this job is not a good job anyway. This job should not be done. This job ought to be abolished from the face of the earth, and I think that we should bomb people into oblivion who force it on people. How about that? Because we are talking about the laws of genital mutilation right here. These are laws of genital mutilation. Specifically, the process and procedure for doing it because it's a Sabbath. Who is the Tana, and how's it going, Pasta? Who is the Tana who holds that if the circumciser had already finished, he must not return and remove the excrescenes? Said Rabba Bar Barhana in the name of Aryahanan. It was Ishmael, the son of Aryahanan ben Beroka, as we have learned in a Boretha. If the 14th of Nisan, which that could be the ultimate, the Nissan ultimate, I just wanted to make a Nissan Ultima joke. Anyway, fall on a Sabbath, the animal used for the Passover sacrifice may be skinned only as far as the breast. So saith Arishmael, the son of Aryahanan, ben Beroka, but the sages say that the whole animal may be skinned. Now we see that Arishmael holds that, that after the work had been completed as far as was necessary, no more may be done. Hence he is the one who says that the circumciser must not return to remove the excrescences. This is not conclusive evidence. It may be that the Ishmael in the case of the sacrifice holds that because it is not necessary that the commandment be beautified, but in the case of circumcision where the beautifying of the commandment is necessary, as is taught in Tract Sakha, we might say that Ishmael is of a different opinion. Therefore, the sages of Neherdai say that the Tanas who hold that after having finished the circumcision, the operator must not commence anew, are in reality the rabbis who differ with Arios in the tract Menachoth concerning the law of the showbreads. You know, I got a good question. We've been reading through all of this Talmud. I'm yet to hear them cite anything that is known in the Old Testament, Apocrypha. The Book of Noah, the Book of Enoch, a handful of others that are part of the rejects, right? And I'm wondering exactly where these books fall depending on what sect, and what sects are we really saying have any of the authority to, let's at the very least say they're connected to the Jewish war. Where was I? Half of a commandment? Karath, it was opposed by an adult. It does not empower. Hold on. The circumcised had performed circumcision Sabbath, did not finish it. He simply made a wound and did not perform a commandment. Hence, he becomes amendable to Karath. That Papa opposed this, the circumciser might say. Oh, no. I stopped right at the break. Right there. That's where I stopped. I'm sorry. All right. All right, it's 8:01. I don't want to go a couple minutes into this. I'd rather do this right now. We're gonna jump to the first break now. Try and keep a good gather on my thoughts, and dive right back into this. All right, so here is perhaps Aeon of Disease with artifacts. Hey, okay. So, the rabbis taught if excrescines remain on the gland after circumcision and are such as make the circumcision invalid, they must be removed, and failure to do so involves the punishment of karath. Who becomes liable to be punished by karath? Said Ar Kahana, the circumciser. If he performed the circumcision on Sabbath and did not finish it, he simply made a wound and did not perform a commandment. Hence, he became amenable to karath. Karath. Arapapa opposed this. The circumciser might say, I have performed one half of a commandment. Come ye and complete the other half. Why should I be punished by karath? Therefore, if the circumcision was performed on an adult who excrescines which made it invalid having remained will not permit them to be removed, he becomes amenable to karath. This was opposed by Arashi. As for an adult, what news does that impart to us? It is expressly stated in Genesis 17:14, and any uncircumcised male who circumciseth not the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. Therefore, he says, nay, it really refers to the circumciser, and only then if he came late on the Sabbath near twilight and was told that it would be impossible to finish the operation before night, but persisted in performing it. If in consequence he left excrescences, which make the circumcision invalid, he simply made a wound without performing a commandment, and thus he becomes amenable to karath. All right, okay, so karath is not... I don't remember karath being mentioned before. Or it wasn't anything that sounded like it was worth my time. What is karath? All right. Karath. Order of holy things. Punishment. Okay, here we go. What do we got here? That is not Talmud, William Davidson. Does this do it? There are 66 cases in the Torah which regard to which one who performs a prohibited action intentionally is liable to receive excision from word to come, karat. They are one who engages in sexual intercourse with his mother. Oh, okay, so incest is frowned upon. All right. Or with the wife of his father, even if she is not his mother, so no fucked up family porn, or with his daughter-in-law. Once again, no fucked up family porn. The same punishment is imposed on a man who engages in intercourse with another male, hazukur, we all know that's in there, or who copulates with an animal, bestiality obviously, and a woman who brings an animal upon her to engage in bestiality. The same punishment is imprisoned on one who engages in intercourse with a woman and her daughter, or with a married woman. The same punishment is imposed on one who engages in intercourse with his sister, or with his father's sister, or with his mother's sister, or with his wife's sister. All right, brother's wife, wife's brother, mother's brother, or with a menstruating woman. All right. Some of that makes sense, as we know our monogamous societies and such today, and taboos. A couple of these are a tiny bit weird, and all that stuff, but So those are two liable to receive cut out, or one who blasphemes the name of heaven. Let's see. One who gives of his children to Moloch, and a necromancer, and one who desecrates Shabbat. All right, so you're definitely not supposed to be okay. So look at that. So this is very interesting. This is the Babylonian Talmud, and it is saying don't offer your child to Moloch, even in the Talmud, with all the awful. Look at what I just fucking found in here. Consistency of pro-life, anti-abortion. I just found it right there. It's in there. I mean, I am sure there's an argument. There's a Baritha somewhere. Where's Hillel? Where's Hillel to before the goody two shoes ruin everybody's fun. Aren't you glad I kept reading? All right. I'm trying to find the so if that's not in there, then what about sex with children? I haven't seen that though. That's bothering me. Okay. Necromancer when desecrates and the same is the punishment of one who is ritually impure or ate sacrificial food, and one who enters the temple while ritually impure, and one who eats forbidden fat or consumes blood or eats meat left over. Right. Yeah, you're not. Yeah. So you're not supposed to consume blood. Like we're not. Yeah, we're like even us as human omnivores, we bleed out our kill before we cook it. Right? We don't eat or drink blood. All right, eating meat, eats meat, offering, sacrifice, intend to consume it after it be outside. Man. I see. Look at this. I don't see that. I don't see where it's talking about you sleeping with with a small child. Well, eats leavened bread, blends incense, pastor's offering, temple. One applies anointing oil, liable to receive credit for intentional violation, brings sin offering, and willing violation. I don't know how they phrase it. I don't want to just fucking. I don't want to throw a fucking word search in there, and because I want to get back to reading the book, but this is the Holocaust for all the transgressions listed, except who defile the temple. The temple is constant. Okay, statement of Rabbi Meyer. Okay. Holocaust, even one who unwittingly exclude the blasphemies. You just state this tally. Rabbi Yonah said, by listing the tally, the mission is teaching that if one perform all of them. All right, this is just getting into another just part of the Talmud. I don't know where the prohibition involved. Liable, bring a sin offering for each and every one. All right, you see, you don't even get a fucking real answer in there. So let's keep going. All right. The circumciser. So where was I kind of... Okay, therefore, if the circumciser was performed, or circumcision was performed on an adult who excrescenes which make it invalid, having remained, will not permit them to be removed, he becomes amenable to kareth. This was opposed by Rashi. As for an adult, what news does that impart to us? It is expressly stated in Genesis 17:14, and any circumcised male who circumciseth not the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. Therefore, he says, nay. It really refers to the circumciser, and only then if he came late on Sabbath near twilight and was told that it would be impossible to finish the operation before night, but persisted in performing it. If, in consequence, he left excrescences, which make the circumcision invalid, he simply made a wound without performing a commandment, and thus he became amenable to kareth. sucking out the blood, Otter Papa said. The circumciser who does not suck out the wound places the child in danger and should be discharged from office. Is this not self-evident? It certainly must be dangerous not to do this, or the Sabbath would not be violated in order to perform that duty. We might assume that the blood, having already come to the surface, it would run out of itself, and hence, by sucking it out, the Sabbath is not violated. Hence, we are given to understand that this is not so. The blood is moved only by the suction, and the Sabbath is violated. But failure to do this would involve danger for the child, and hence it is permitted, and is regarded the same as applying a plaster or caraway seed mentioned further on in the Mishnah, the omission of which would also involve danger to the child. Right. So, don't worry. We got a loophole. You can get your dirty rocks off on the Sabbath. We found out why it's okay. Nothing to fear. There will never be a day you lack in your life. Alright, that was horribly crude. Anyway, applying a plaster or caraway seeds. Abai said, "My mother told me that the most effective plaster for all ills is made of 7 different kinds of fat and 1 kind of wax." And Rabbah said, "The best plaster for all ills is one made of wax and resin." Rabbah stated this publicly in a lecture in the city of Mahuza, and 2 brothers, the sons of Minyomi, who were physicians, tore their clothes in anger, for they had known of it and made capital out of the secret until Rabbah came and revealed it. Said Rabbah to them, "I will tell you of something that I shall not proclaim publicly," and that is, Samuel said, that one who washes his face and does not dry it thoroughly becomes afflicted with scabs, and the remedy for such is the fluid extract of mangold. If the latter caraway seeds had not been ground before the Sabbath, etc., the rabbis taught in preparing for circumcision such things as must not be done on Sabbath may be done on a festival. One may grind the seeds and mix wine with oil. Asked Abai of Yosef, "Who may the caraway seeds be ground on a festival? Because they may be utilized for cooking. Then why should it not be permitted to mix wine with oil on Sabbath?" It may be utilized for a sick person who is not dangerously ill, as we have learned in a Boretha. Wine and oil must not be mixed for a sick person on the Sabbath, but Simon ben Eleazar, in the name of Arameyer, said that it may be said, Simon ben Eleazar, it once happened that Arameyer was sick with stomach trouble, and we wanted to mix wine with oil for him on the Sabbath. But he would not permit us to do this, so we asked him whether he wished his own words to be made void during his lifetime, and he answered nay. It is allowed to mix wine with oil on Sabbath, but I cannot bring it over me to act contrary to the decree of my colleagues. So he's got a collegiate tradition, and he is saying that, don't worry, this mixing is not a prohibition. It's just that we don't mix. But you can mix if you want to. There's not a law issue here at all, actually. That seems to be what I think he's saying, which that's interesting that like, you rarely hear that come up. So anyway, thus we see that it is at all events allowed to mix wine with oil on the Sabbath. Why then does the Mishnah say that if this was not done on the day before the Sabbath, each should be applied separately? The difference lies therein that when giving it to a sick person, it is merely mixed, but when used for a bomb at circumcision, it must be thoroughly stirred and requires a good deal of labor. Let it be given, applied, just mixed. That is just what the Mishnah prescribes, each to be applied separately, i.e., it should not be stirred. Abai said, "My mother told me that if a child appears red all over, it is a sign that the circulation is imperfect, and hence circumcision should be postponed until the circulation is perfect. If a child has a greenish cast, it is a sign that the blood is impoverished, and the circumcision should then be postponed until the blood is richer. This we have also learned in Aboretha as follows. Our Nathan said, I once went to a city by the sea, and there met a woman whose first and second child both died in consequence of circumcision. The third child she brought to me, and I noticed that it was quite red. I told her to wait until the red had settled and then circumcise it. She did so and then circumcised it, and the child lived." Just like... It is absolutely insane that you're aware that this procedure can kill your child. And you think it's necessary. Right? Just like the way you're forcing all sorts of young people to get vaccinated to just... The blood boils. The blood boils. I've heard newborn children learn to say no. I've heard no out of a baby's mouth. And yeah, the kid doesn't have agency. We always talk about that. But everybody knows that certain things happening to a small child are traumatic. And it's best not to do extra procedures. But we've been living in a dark age where trust in what we think is this amazing futuristic medical system, because it's like a Monty Python sketch. Look, here's the machine that goes bing. It cost $10,000. Right? And here's your bill. Look at that perfectly safe baby that you got 5 seconds to see. I knew at some point the dark pessimism of the 70s was going to have a complete heyday in our society. Something about the nastiest, darkest element of 1970s cultivation was going to mature at some point. And the old guard of a different value were going to fade and make a dangerously immoral space. And we're dealing with that now. Okay. So both died, blood, settled, circumcision. He did circumcise, and the child lived. The child was then named after me, Nathan the Babylonian. At another time I came to the country of Cappadocia, and a woman came to me, telling me that she had 2 children circumcised, both of whom had died in consequence of circumcision. The third she brought to me, and I noticed that it had a greenish cast. I also noticed that if it were circumcised, no blood would flow, so I told her to wait until the circulation of the blood was in order. She did so, and the child was circumcised and lived. She named it also after me, and called it Nathan the Babylonian. Mishnah. One may bathe the child both before the circumcision as well as after on Sabbath, by sprinkling water over it with one hand, but not by pouring water over it from a vessel. Or Elazar ben Azariah says one may bathe a child on the third day after the circumcision, even if it fall on a Sabbath. For it is written, Genesis 34:25, and it came to pass on the third day when they were sore, an account of a doubtful child, a child about which there is a doubt whether it was born in the 8th month of its gestation, and is therefore not expected to live, or a hermaphrodite, the Sabbath rest must not be desecrated. Yehuda permits this in the case of a hermaphrodite. Interesting. We're sore on account of a doubtful child, about which there is a doubt whether it was born in the 8th month of its gestation. And if it is therefore not expected or a hermaphrodite, the Sabbath rest must not be desecrated. Okay. Yehuda permits this in the case of the hermaphrodite. Oh, okay. I see. All right. So, yeah. So, Yehuda's a dissenting opinion here. All right. Gemara. The Mishnah commences by saying, one may bathe the child, and then goes on to say that it may only be sprinkled by hand. That is not bathing, said Rabbah. The Mishnah means to state that a child may be bathed as usual on the day of circumcision, either before or after the performance of the rite, but on the third day after circumcision, if that day should be a Sabbath, one may only sprinkle the child by hand and not bathe it in a vessel. Or Eleazar ben Azariah, however, said that even if the third day fell on a Sabbath, the child may be bathed as usual, as it is written in Genesis 34:15, and it came to pass on the third day when they were sore. When Ardimi came from Palestine, he said in the name of our Eleazar that the halakha prevails according to our Eleazar ben Azariah. In the West, the question was discussed whether our Eleazar ben Azariah meant that the whole body of the child might be bathed, or whether the part circumcised only might be bathed, said one of the rabbis, whose name was Ar Jacob. It seems to me that the whole body is meant, because if the wound only was meant, therein does the wound caused by circumcision differ from any other wound. Any wound may be bathed on the Sabbath in water and oil, according to Rab's opinion. This was opposed by Ar Yosef. It is immaterial whether the water was warmed on the Sabbath or before the Sabbath. This was again opposed by Ardimi. Whence dost thou know that the Mishnah refers to water that was warmed on Sabbath? Perhaps they, the sages, and Ar Eleazar differ even as to water warmed before the Sabbath set in. Said Abai, I was prepared to answer this question myself. But Yosef preceded me and said that of a necessity the water must have been warmed on Sabbath because the precariousness of the child demanded it. We were taught that when Rabin came from Palestine, he said in the name of Ar Abuha, quoting Ar Eleazar, and according to another version, in the name of Ar Ahuba, quoting Ar Yohanan, that the halakha prevails according to Ar Eleazar ben Azariah, which it be with water that was warmed on the Sabbath or before the Sabbath, or whether the whole body or only the circumcised part is concerned, because it would be dangerous not to bathe the child, on that day. It was said above, in the name of Rab, that every wound may be bathed on the Sabbath with water or oil, but Samuel said the water may be poured at one side of the wound, and it may run down into the wound. An objection was made. We have learned that oil or water must not be put on a piece of cotton to place on a wound. This is prohibited on account of the necessity to wring the piece of cotton. We have been taught by a Boretha in accordance with Samuel's opinion, via water must not be placed directly on the wound, but near it, that it may run down into the wound. The rabbis taught dry cotton and dry sponge, but not dry papyrus or dry cloth, may be placed on a ground. This presents a contradiction. Is not dry cotton the same dry cloth? This is no difficulty. By cloth is meant new cloth, which must not be used, whereas old cloth may be, said Abai. From this we see that piece of cloth heal a wound. All right, hang on. So we're going to mark ourselves here. Yeah, because that's a long passage. All right. 8:32. We're going to take a break right here. We'll come back. We'll learn some of their funky little hermaphrodite circumcision laws and keep moseying down this chapter in which we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About 6 pages plus a thing of footnotes. So we'll be getting through this. We'll go to the end of this chapter tonight, and then that'll be good. All right. The next song up is called... actually, hold on a second. I gotta let this cross over to the next song, and there we go. This is... wait, no, there is an ad. Let's let the ad skip. This next song is going to be called Ominous Signs. good fade out right there. It'll be... Is there going to be an ad? Looks like there will be an ad. Just going to skip the ad so it's all queued up for the next song. There we go. Excellent. So, on account of a doubtful child or an hermaphrodite, etc., the rabbis taught it is written in Leviticus 12:3, his foreskin. So on account of a foreskin which must be circumcised, the Sabbath may be violated. But on account of one which is doubtful, the Sabbath must not be desecrated. Such also is the case with the circumcision of the foreskin of a true male, but not with that of a hermaphrodite. Ad Yehuda said, however, that the Sabbath may be violated on account of a hermaphrodite, and if the latter is not circumcised, he becomes amenable to karath. The Sabbath may also be violated on account of a child who was born at a certain time, but not on account of one who was born at twilight. And it is not known whether it was born on Sabbath or on the following day. You know, these guys could have. They could have, if they really wanted to, had said, you know, maybe we don't have to, you know, if God wants to deliver this kid, wants this kid to be born in on schedule that interrupts the Sabbath, then let's just make sure everything's all right with the kid and then just get back to Sabbath after that, right? Drop everything that you're doing. Make sure the kid's all right. But but I think the problem is that this exists because their people are in a state where they can't do that simply. They can't just drop what they're doing to do what's obviously the necessary bare minimum. So everything is fine and everybody's happy at the end of it all, and then get back to it. Right? They need this guidebook in order to have that happen. Okay, so the Sabbath may be violated on account of a child who was born at a certain time, but on account of born at twilight. It is not allowed to violate the Sabbath on account of a child who was born without a foreskin, because the school of Shammai only contends that even if a child is born without a foreskin, some blood must be drawn in commemoration of the covenant. Oh! Thank you! Thank you. It's not about the genital mutilation. It's about the ritual bloodletting. That's the whole thing. It's literally the whole thing right there. So, does that mean girls go through this? Because why does a hermaphrodite get to go through this if they're not a boy or a girl? All right, so the school of Hillel, however, says that is not necessary, said Adaziman ben Elazar. The school of Hillel and the school of Shammai did not differ as to a child born without a foreskin. Both agree that blood must be drawn from it because the foreskin is not wholly missing, but is merely ingrown. Okay, but so wait, they're not arguing about the bloodletting, though, so they still have to do that. Just think about a culture. It's just like, oh my gosh, your beautiful baby is born. Let's cut it. Right? You live in a culture where the first thing your God wants you to fucking do to your kid is wound their genitals. And you consider yourself civilized? Of a god of love? The fucking Dark Ages of the whole goddamn fucking thing. Holy shit with the people, like the logic that a human being has to live under to, you know, to dismiss such a deed done to their reproductive nerve endings. Right? Because the whole thing is about a mindset of numbing your reproductive drive. That is the purpose of making sure you get an exposed foreskin. But they're doing it now because this is like when you get your baby baptized, right? You get them in that fucking spiritual contract before they are of agency. So both agree the blood must be drawn, but merely ingrown. The differ only as regards to the proselyte who was born without a foreskin. When seeking conversion, the school of Shammai contends that blood of the covenant must be drawn from his gland, whereas the school of Hillel does not require this to be done. From the gland? Like, okay, so the Hillel school, they said they're not arguing about the blood. The blood has to go, but how is the Hillel not requiring the blood of the gland? The whole thing is about the circumcision. So is it bloodletting from the arm? Where is this bloodletting? You see how that's a little bit confusing. The master said, on account of a doubtful child, the Sabbath must not be desecrated. What does he mean by doubtful? He means to say that we learn from the rabbis via a child born in the 7th month may have the Sabbath violated for it, but if born in the 8th, it must not. It is doubtful whether it was born in the 7th or in the 8th month. The Sabbath must not be violated on its account. Not only this, but a child born in the 8th month must not even be carried on the Sabbath, because it is like a stone and cannot live. It is allowed, however, for the mother to stoop down and suckle the child, because it is dangerous for the mother to carry too much milk. It is? Sure, why not? I can help with that. Oh, okay. We were taught that Rab said, referring to a child born without a foreskin, the halakha prevails according to the unknown Tehena. While Samuel said the halakha prevails according to Simon ben Elazar Eda bar Ahaba had a child that was born without a foreskin. So we carried him to 13 circumcisers unto the child was maimed and made impotent. Said he, I deserve this fate, because I did not follow the dictum of Rab. Said Naaman to him, thou hast not only disobeyed Rab, but also Samuel. For Samuel said that a child born without a foreskin should be bled only if it was born on a weekday, but not on a Sabbath. And thy child was born on a Sabbath. Eda bar Ahaba, however, held that he had only disobeyed Rab because he was certain that the foreskin of a child is never wholly missing, but is merely ingrown and should be lanced even on Sabbath. As we have taught, Rab said that there is fear lest it be an ingrown foreskin, but Ar-Yosef said that we were certain that it is so. Said Ar-Yosef, when do I know this? From the following Boretha, Ar Elazar Par said that the school of Shammai and Hillel do not differ as to a child that is born without a foreskin. Both agree that the blood of the covenant must be drawn from the gland. The school of Shammai, however, contends that this may be done on the Sabbath, while the other holds that the Sabbath must not be desecrated on the account. If then Ar Elazar Hakapar holds that they differ only as the desecration of the Sabbath, the first Tana must hold that both schools agree that the Sabbath may be desecrated on that account, and in consequence must also hold that the foreskin is not wholly missing, but is merely ingrown, hence I am certain that it is so. Let me see here. Charles ever wholly foreskin, what was the word I just saw? For the covenant, right? Right, okay. Talmud. Circumcision. Blood. Covenant. All right. This is for sale. No, that's not helping me. Brit Milah, Talmud on blessing for circumcision. Covenant controversy. That's the Brit Milah, is one of the oldest, most universally recognized commandments of Jewish tradition. Spiritual symbol, biblical, theological. Hang on a sec. I'm not used to using this system. There we go. Find on this page. Blood. All right. This language not only erases profound religious meaning on the practice, but also evokes historical accusations against Jews, including medieval blood libels and Nazi-era propaganda. Right. The Hafala, drawing a symbolic drop of blood, is not required for men already circumcised. Okay, here we go. The Hatafat Dam Brit. Copy. Okay. Circumcision remains as reasons they exempt. However, unlike absolute net zerem Judaism emphasizes. All right, hang on. Paste. All right, as a mu'al with over 3 decades of experience, what's that, a moil? I know, that's the name of the circumciser. I've been privileged to guide many families through sacred Jewish life cycle moments. Among the less commonly discussed but spiritually significant rituals is the Hafat Dam Brit, literally meaning the drawing of the blood of the covenant. This gentle procedure carries profound meaning for those reconnecting with their Jewish heritage or affirming their place within our covenant community. What is Hafat Dam Brit? Hafat Dam Brit is a symbolic ritual involving the drawing of a drop of blood from the site of circumcision. It is called for when a person who is not Jewish but circumcised wishes to convert. This might include an adult who is choosing Judaism or an infant who was circumcised in a hospital setting but did not have the religious ceremony of Brit Milah, covenant of circumcision. Unlike a complete Brit Milah, which involves the removal of the foreskin, the Hatafat Dam Brit is symbolic or token circumcision. The ritual fulfills the halakhic Jewish legal requirement of having a physical representation of the covenant between the individual and the divine. The Hatafat Dam is never performed instead of circumcision and is reserved only for situations where an individual has already undergone a surgical procedure that was not done lishem mitzvah for the sake of performing a sacred task. Okay, so, all right. So you can have a Hatafat Dam Brit without a circumcision. You can have Hatafat Dam Brit because you've already been circumcised. But you cannot get one without getting a circumcision. And you cannot have a circumcision without having one because, well, you know, you're cutting the fort, there's going to be a drop of blood. Right? Okay, so that's good enough for me. Okay, so where was I? Was John's born foreskin should be bled only if that was born a weekday? Hold on. Where am I down now? For a child born without a foreskin, the halakha prevails, right? Okay, so I should have gotten down here, right? Okay, desecration. Schools agree that Sabbath must be the holy missing is merely ingrown. Hence, I am certain that is so. Okay, so whence do we know that the first Tana holds as above and not that both schools agree to the contrary? Via the Sabbath must not be desecrated. If such would be the case, for what reason would Hakapar tell us that Beth Shammai holds that the Sabbath should be violated? The halakha would not prevail thus. Nay, perhaps our Elazar means to tell us principally that both schools hold that if a child is born without a foreskin on a weekday, he must have his gland lanced, and incidentally mentions that it is a different. If a difference existed, it was concerning the Sabbath. So, Ar Asai said, if a child be born of a woman who, after giving birth, must keep the law mentioned in Leviticus 12:2, the child must be circumcised on the 8th day. But a case where the woman need not keep the law mentioned. For instance, if the child was taken out through the sides by means of instrument, or if the woman was a Gentile on the day of giving birth to the child and became a convert to Judaism on the day following, and hence need not observe that law, the child need not be circumcised just on the 8th day, but any time. As is written in Ibid, if a woman have conceived seed and born a male child, then shall she be unclean 7 days, etc., etc., Ibid 3. And on the 8th day shall the flesh of his foreskin be circumcised, and obey I to him. What about the generation before the law was given? The woman knew nothing of the law of uncleanness, and still the children had to be circumcised on the 8th day, answered Arasi. Since the law was given, a new halakha has been in force. Nay, this is not so. Have we not learned that if a child was taken through the side of a woman, or if it had two foreskins through the side, I'm assuming we're talking about cesarean section, or if it had two foreskins. Arhuna and Harhaya Barab entertained different opinions as to whether it should be circumcised on the Sabbath or not. One claimed that it should, and the other that it should not. Now we see that they differed only as to a desecration of the Sabbath, but nothing is said about the non-necessity of the child's being circumcised on the 8th day. One is dependent upon the other. He who holds that the Sabbath should be violated does so because he also holds that the child must be circumcised the 8th day, while he who holds that the Sabbath must be violated does so because he holds that such a child need not be circumcised on the 8th day. We have learned in a Boretha, Rabban Simon ben Gamaliel said, every human child that has lived for 30 days cannot be called a miscarriage, as is written in Numbers 18:16. And those that are to be redeemed from a month old shalt thou redeem, and any young of an animal that has attained the age of 8 days cannot be called a miscarriage, as it is written. Leviticus 22:27. So every child that has lived for 30 days cannot be called. Do you realize that in Talmudic law you could be born for 30 days and be considered not delivered? If you're miscarried, that means you were not delivered, or you were improperly delivered, I suppose, right? A miscarriage of birth. That is that reminds me of how quite a few years ago during that 2019 period, you had the state of Virginia, and they were doing fucking post-birth abortions. I wonder where they got that idea. When a bullock or a sheep or a goat is brought forth, then shall it remain 7 days by its mother, and from the 8th day and henceforth shall it be favorably received. And okay, so eight days, right? So you almost want to be a goyim to them in that respect, because I'd rather there be an 8-day window that they can kill me than a 30-day window that they can kill me. That just exponentially increases my odds of surviving a psychopath. Do the Jews account for psychopaths when they look at these laws and they trust men with their common sense? How then is it allowed to circumcise any child on the Sabbath? Perhaps it is a miscarriage, and in that event it would be wrongful to inflict a wound in vain, said Eda bar Ahaba. We may do so at all events. If it is a regularly born child, the commandment is fulfilled, and if not, no wound is inflicted, but merely a piece of flesh is cut. Now then, we have learned in the above Beretha that if it be doubtful whether the child was born in the 8th or in the 7th month of the Sabbath, must not be violated on its account. Why should this be so? Let it be circumcised at all events. If then it proves to be a regularly born child, it was right to circumcise it, and if not, no labor was performed, but merely an incision in the flesh was made. Said Mar, the son of Rabbina, I and Arnahumai bar Zacharias have explained it thus: the child should be circumcised, but the injunction of the above Boretha not to violate the Sabbath refers to the preparations which are necessary for circumcision, and this is in accordance with the decree of Eleazar. And that makes sense. You would set up like a table, like you're gonna know ahead of time because of how pregnant a woman is, typically. Like, you know, if you're a Jewish doctor for these Jewish whatevers, you probably would want to always have a circumcision table ready to go on the fly for any hour's notice. You're open, you know, like if something's got to happen on the Sabbath, drop everything like it's hot. Do it real fast. Get it done. Get back to not doing work. You know, this whole fucking thing you gotta do to make Sky Daddy happy. The schoolmen propounded a question: do the rabbis differ with Simon ben Gamaliel, or do they not? If they do, does the halakha remain according to Simon, or not? Come in here, Ar Yehuda said in the name of Samuel that the Holocaust prevails according to Ar Simon ben Gamaliel. Now, if he says that the Holocaust prevails according to Ar Simon, then there must be some who differ with Ar Simon. Right, but if the... Okay, so the Holocaust prevails. So that's interesting that they say that. Then why are they pressing that here and not in other places? Right? This is the first time somebody said, well, hold on. I want a dissenting opinion from Simon's statements about the Holocaust prevailing. So why is there a contention with Simon? It's not that it matters, but it's just interesting when the pattern breaks randomly. And it's happening here with the issue of circumcision, which, you know, talking about something that is a butchery that, you know, a Christian shouldn't have to go through that. If Jesus was enough, then there's not a goddamn reason you need to fucking circumcise. Because that's all part of it. Which is why they had to make up a lot of bullshit science about it. Which then plays on your, well, I don't have a reason not to be circumcised. As a Christian, I am a Reformed Jew, and I worship a circumcised God. I better circumcise like my God, because it's in the name of what I am, Christ-like. And Christ was circumcised. And that's how they coerced many Catholics and Protestants to do this to ourselves. Abai said, if a child was killed by accident, either through the falling off a roof or through being killed by a lion before it had lived 30 days, all agree that it must be presumed that it was a regularly born child. A point of difference arises concerning a child that had lived less than 30 days and during its lifetime was very weak and merely breathing. Some say that it was a miscarriage and others that it was a regularly born child. What difference does it make? It makes a difference where the levirate marriage is concerned. If the child is presumed to be regularly born, to be a regularly born child, it exempts a man from the levirate marriage. But if it is presumed to be a miscarriage, it does not exempt a man. Okay, so before we go to Let Us See and read further down, let me double check. How many pages are we? 1, 2, about 3 pages left, maybe less. That's good. All right, good. Let's move on to the next song, A New Age of Terror.
Such a
Excellent. Let us see. It is said above that if the child die by accident, all agree that it is a regularly born child. Yet we know that it happened to Papa and Arhuna, the son of Yehoshua, who were the guests of Ida bar Eben. But the latter prepared for them a calf, which was the third in birth of its mother, in the 7th day of its life. And they said to him, if ye had waited to kill this calf until evening, we would eat of it, because it would then have been in its 8th day. But now we will not eat of it. Hence we see that although this was a healthy calf and met its death violently, they regarded it as doubtful whether it was a miscarriage or not. Hence say, rather that on the contrary, if the child was weak and barely breathing prior to its death, all agree that it must be presumed to be a miscarriage. But they differ as to a child which had met its death by accident. Some say that it must be regarded as a regularly born child, and others that it was a miscarriage. I can kind of understand a little bit of this just for the sake of certain things that are much more innocent than it seems. But also, I just want to say that I do also kind of find it a little bit crazy that they have they'll eat an 8-day-old cow. A baby cow, like a baby cow, like something that's probably about this big, cute little friggin' smallest version of those kinds of things walking around. 8 days. And you're gonna fucking send it to a slaughterhouse? I mean, I eventually just stopped eating veal. I can't even rationalize eating veal anymore. It's like, all right, you know what? This is an interesting taste and all that. I don't think slaughtering such a young animal is worth anything, and I can dismiss this taste, and I'll be fine never tasting this ever again. It's not a bad taste. It's well prepared. But I think it's wrong to eat an animal that young. All right. The son of Ardimi bar Yosef had a child born to him, which died inside of 30 days. So he went into mourning for it. Said his father to him, what wouldst thou eat? Delicious? Is that delicacies? It's delicacies. What would thou eat? What wouldst thou? Eat delicacies? That thou sittest in mourning? And he answered, I am positive that the child was a regularly born child. Huh. Why wouldst thou eat delicacies? Okay, so wait, so he was a regularly born child, and that's why he's mourning, right? The son of Joseph had a child born to him, which died inside of 30 days. So he went into mourning for it. Said his father to him, what wouldst thou? Eat delicacies, that thou sittest in mourning. I don't understand why he's saying eat delicacies about this. That's very strange to me. That thou sittest in mourning. And he answered, I am positive that the child was regularly born. So, okay, I guess that all makes sense. Ad Yehuda permits this in the case of a hermaphrodite. Said Shez being the name of Arhista. Not in every case does Yehuda hold an hermaphrodite to be a male, for he would say that in all cases he considers him to be a male. The hermaphrodite would come under the law of estimations. Leviticus 27:2-15, and in the tract Erechim estimations, we may learn that according to Ad Yehuda, he is exempt. Why is he considered a male as concerns circumcisions? Because it is written in Genesis 17:10, every man-child among you shall be circumcised, and every includes also hermaphrodites. According to who? Okay, let's take a look at these. Genesis 17:10. Old Testament. Genesis 17:10. You shall keep between me and yourselves, your seed after you, your male after among you is to be. Okay. All right. I think they've cited this one before. I think they've cited this one a couple of times for stuff. So hang on here. So, covenant, this covenant of me, which you shall keep between me and between you and between the seed of you after you, to be circumcised to you of every male. Right. Let me see. Male here is Zakar. Properly remembered, i.e. a male or a man or animals as being the most noteworthy sex. Interesting. All right. Okay. Covenant and the seed of you. What is seed of you? Okay. Zera. Like my name, Zerilath. Zera. Zera. Seed. Figuratively, fruit, plant, sowing time, posterity, currently child, fruitful seed. See, the seed in the sowing, that all makes sense, right? Okay, so if we talk about a cognate relationship, right? Why do I use Zerilath as my pseudonym, as my performing name, as my wizardly avatar calling? Zerilath, eternal. I took Etruscan, which I took Zera and Zelath. So the Zelath part, which is not in question, it means a cultural functionary, and it means it in a religious context, like a ceremonial magician, so on and so forth. Somebody like what these circumcisers are as well. Those are cultural functionaries, right? Of a specific title, but, they would be categorized. If I spoke Etruscan and I was looking at all sorts of different people doing all sorts of different customary things, and so like those are the Zelaths of their civilization, I suppose, right? So Zeri means like one. It means like singular. So for it to represent the word seed in Hebrew, there's a cognate there. That's kind of cool to hear that cognate. This may be indicative of a reflection of the Sea Peoples Federation's relationship with the Etruscans. All right, kids, aren't we glad we learned something today? Circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and this will be the covenant between you, me, and yourselves. So, the hermaphrodite has to have foreskin, and so they go through this whole argument that he's got like an ingrown foreskin is the idea, right? I mean, there's different kinds of hermaphrodites. Not all hermaphrodites grow a penis shaft. Some of them grow testicles, or they have foreskin and poorly developed testicles and maybe a larger lump labia kind of thing. There's weird stuff. Weird stuff. And some weird lady has done porn of it. Anyone born in the household, right? There's all that. He shall be circumcised. Yes, circumcised the manservant born in your house or acquired with money. Thus will my covenant be marked in your flesh as an Eonian covenant. Right? Elohim spoke. Imagine, like, because that's really the problem. It's like, it's a branding mechanism, right? Because everybody knows that everybody knows that they're making medical, scientific excuses for a religious branding mechanism, which is also what COVID was. All right? Okay, so that's Genesis. All right, what was the prior one? So this was Leviticus 27. Leviticus 27. Let me see if I can put this together because I'm not convinced. Leviticus 25, 6, 7, 2 through 15, and its tract estimations. Okay. Speak to the sons of Israel, you will say to them in case anyone makes an extraordinary vow to Yahweh involving your... Okay, so your appraisal, 50 shekels of silver. Be for a male, 20 years... Okay, let's see. Okay, all right, so some gender assignment stuff going on here. And if she is a female, then your appraisal will be 30 shekels. If the person is from 5 years old unto 20 years old... If the person is from a month old unto 5 years old, female for shekels, if the person is reduced by poverty, if the vow involves a domestic beast from which get away, he shall not exchange it nor substitute for it. Substitute beast, so be unclean beast of which they may not stand before the beast. Praise it, whether it be good or bad, according to this. If you see redeem, you redeem a fifth of the value in case a man sanctifies his house to be holy. I don't see anything about like, and if you don't know, if you don't know which way the hermaphrodite is to be ritually honored, right? Yeah, because he would say that in all cases he considers him to be a male. The hermaphrodite would come under the law of estimations. So they're saying is that, but that, I don't see that here in Leviticus at all. Two through 14, right? He should redeem his house and his foreign silver. I don't know what word I would look for that would be used to explain this. Or they probably have a term, right? Because perhaps the word in Hebrew was lost because of their broken language. And so there was a term for it here. Okay, there's more stuff about foreskin here too, but... Confess their depravities, that myself went to contrary to them, for my covenant with Jacob. Foreskins of them, rejected by my ordinance, and their souls shall be loathed by statutes, yet in spite of this. Okay, forget it. All right, I don't know. It's pain. It's pain in the butt. I tried. Mishnah. If one have two children to be circumcised, one after the Sabbath and the other on the Sabbath, and through forgetfulness circumcise the former on the Sabbath, he is culpable. If one of the children, however, was to be circumcised on the day before the Sabbath and the other on the Sabbath, through the forgetfulness one had the former circumcised on the Sabbath, Ar Elazar declares him liable for a sin offering, and Ar Yehoshua declares him free. Arhuna learns the Mishnah literally in the first case he is culpable. Ar Yehuda, however, learns to the contrary, that he is not culpable. Arhuna learns that he is culpable from what we have learned in a Boretha via said Simon ben Elazar, Ar Elazar, and Ar Yoshua do not differ as to the case where a man has two children to be circumcised, one after the Sabbath and the other on the Sabbath, who through forgetfulness circumcised the former on Sabbath. They both declare him culpable. Their point of difference is if one of the children was to have been circumcised on the day before Sabbath and the other on the Sabbath, and through forgetfulness the former was circumcised on the Sabbath, the former declares him culpable and the latter free. Both of them derive their decrees from the law concerning idolatry. All sin offerings are based upon the sin offerings incidental to the laws of idolatry. Our Eliezer holds that as an idolatry, so also it is with the Sabbath. If the commandment is, thou shalt not do so, and the man did it, he is liable for a sin offering. And Yoshua says, here it is different. The intention was to fulfill a commandment, and if accidentally it was not done, he should be free. Okay, so everything is derivative of idolatry, right? Which means everything's derivative of the first commandment, right? You know, it's a bullshit. It's just there to make everything bound into an absolution. It's a very atonistic, reductionist idea. Right? Because that sounds insane that you would basically say somebody is committing idolatry for dealing with a time crunch on a delivery of children. I just can't. I think it's ridiculous. All right. And Ar Yehuda learns the Mishnah not culpable, derived his support from the following Boretha. Ar Meyer said, Ar Elazar and Ar Yehoshua do not differ as to the case where a man has two children to be circumcised, one before the Sabbath and the other on the Sabbath, and through forgetfulness circumcise the former on Sabbath. They both declare him not culpable. Their point of difference is, if one of the children was to be circumcised on the day after Sabbath, and the other on Sabbath, and through forgetfulness the former was circumcised on the Sabbath, Ar Elazar declares him culpable, and Ar Yashua declares him free. Both of them derive their decrees from the law concerning idolatry, as is said above. Mishnah. A child may be legally circumcised on the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th day after its birth, but neither before nor after. How so? Usually it may be circumcised on the 8th day, one born at the evening, twilight on the 9th, one born at the evening, twilight before Sabbath, on the 10th, if a feast day follows that Sabbath. It may be circumcised on the 11th, if both New Year feast days follow that Sabbath on the 12th. A sick child must not be circumcised until it is thoroughly recovered. Do girls gotta go through any of this, right? To be honest with you, the women, I don't know what the perks are for the women, but there's definitely far more downsides for the men. Gemara, said Samuel, after the fever has left the child 7 days, should be allowed to elapse until the child get well. Before the circumcision is performed, the schoolmen propounded a question. Must every day be of 24 hours duration, or may the last of the 7 days be counted if only a few hours have passed? Come and hear Luda taught. The last day of the child's convalescence is more important than the day of its birth. For a child may be circumcised on the 8th day after its birth, even if 1 hour of that day be past, but the 7th day of its convalescence after a sickness must be one of the fully 24 hours before circumcision is permitted. Mishnah, the following principle excrescens knobs make the circumcision invalid. Flesh that covers the larger part of the gland of the organ, a man so circumcised must not, if he be a priest, partake in teruma, heave offerings. If the child be very fleshy and such imperfect circumcision is caused thereby, the knobs must, for appearance's sake, be cut away. One who was circumcised without having had the skin torn open is considered uncircumcised. Ar Abina, in the name of Ar Yeremiah bar Abba, quoting Rab, said, by stating flesh that covers the larger part of the gland. The Mishnah means to say the upper part of the gland. The head of the penis, right? The upper part of the gland. Yeah. Let's pretend this isn't as vile as it is. If the child be very fleshy, we have learned in a Boretha, our Simon ben Gamaliel said, if the gland of the child be surrounded by a fleshy coating, and when erect, the gland appears to be erect? We're talking about a fucking 8-day-old. Am I 8-day or am I 8 years? Am I being ridiculous? Am I reading it the way I want to read it? We're talking about baby people, right? Following extra scenes make of circle. I mean, it's been everything else since then. I'm going to assume so, okay? For fuck's sake. The coating need not be cut away, but if it does not appear to be circumcised, the coating should be cut away. One who was circumcised without having had the skin torn open, etc. The rabbis taught that the benediction to be pronounced by the circumciser before performing the rite should be as follows. Praise art thou, Lord, O God, King of the universe. Thou hast sanctified us with thy commandment, and has commanded us the circumcision. The father of the child should pronounce the following benediction in the interval between the circumcision and the tearing open of the skin. Who has sanctified us with thy commandment, and has commanded us to enter the child into the covenant of Abraham our father. All of this is just sick, by the way. Right? This is, going through the ritual that makes genital mutilation seem like it's divine ordinance, and that there's nothing wrong with the people of a God who commands them to do these things, especially because they are people of a God that they believe commands them. Anything that is commanding you is not a God. Anyway, people don't understand what God is, and We lost that relationship quite a long time ago. It's the difference between the animism versus the baseline paganism, which is trying to not be Christian, but motifs that you're familiar with can get in there. But we've gotten very good at it pretty fast. So anyway. One who was circumcised without having had the skin torn open, etc. The rabbis taught the benediction to be pronounced. Okay, I'm sorry. The commandment and last command of the circumcision. The father of the child should pronounce the following benediction in the interval between the circumcision and the tearing open of the skin. Who has sanctified us with thy commandment and hast commanded us to enter the child into the covenant of Abraham our father? The bystanders must respond, as he hath been entered into the covenant, so may he also be entered into the law, into the bridal canopy. The bridal canopy. Doesn't that just sound like a wonderful placement? And into good deeds. The man who makes the benediction over the goblet of wine should say as follows: Blessed art thou, etc., who has sanctified thy favored one, meaning the patriarch Isaac. From Genesis 22:2, even in the womb, as it is written in Genesis 17:19, and I will establish my covenant with him who hath made a sign in his body and hath scaled his children with the sign of the holy covenant. Therefore, as a reward for this, we pray thee, thou living God, to command our children be saved from the grave because of the covenant that is scaled in our flesh. I am yet to meet a circumcised soul, whether of proper bloodline, according to them, or improper bloodline, that has ever not gone to the grave because they got circumcised. There's literally, because yeah, you're gonna go in a grave, dude. We all do. And there's a whole lot of things that can happen to your soul when you die. But your body's going in a grave if it's not getting incinerated. It will have a lying place in the earth. So that's a terrible, that's cognitive dissonance to say that. And then to act like you never said it for the rest of your life. Because you know you're going to end up in a grave. And you know that circumcision did nothing for you. And you know that they forced you to say, this is a tyrant. That's how tyrants do. Right? And it doesn't have to even be a good promise. It just has to be the slightest inkling of hope mixed in with the determinism of the despair of your situation. Thou, O Lord, who didst make thy covenant, one who circumcised his slave, pronounces the same prayers it used for proselytes, inserting slaves where proselytes is used, and the one making the benediction does likewise. Heavens and earth does not exist. It is a covenant by day and night. Ours is heaven. Hold on a second. Children and sign, living God, covenant is scaled in our flesh. Yeah, blessed art thou, Lord, hast made the covenant. One who circumcised proselytes must say, blessed art thou, etc., and hast commanded us the circumcision. The one who pronounces the benediction of the goblet must say, blessed art thou. Okay, so anyway. Okay, there we go. That's the end. Good. Perfect. This is a good spot to end it. promise stands for the Hebrew imrotheko, literally thy word. And then I'm wondering if one of these answered that thing I was thinking about. This seeming miracle is explained at length in our history of amulets. The the explanation is as follows. God referred as Moses in power of the time of Elisha. Recognize the Ion Tefaf. Okay. All right. Vianvehu is interpreted by the Talmud. I will beautify him. All the translation of the Bible. Okay. Explain the tract. All right, that's fine. All right, cool. That's going to be good for tonight, I think. Chapter 20 will be next. Regulations concerning certain acts of labor which must be performed differently on a Sabbath and on a festival. That's what we'll be at next. We're at 281 out of 346. All right. So we are... a little over 60 pages left. A little over 60 pages left. Let me find out how long chapter 22 is, in fact. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It'll be a good 9 to 10 page read. Which... if we go fast, we might be able to get that done in one session, depending on how long I want to go. That could possibly be done in 3 hours. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Hope you were listening. My numbers have been rising, so even though I don't get a whole lot of live time traffic, I am building a stable... subscriber base, which is fun. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Maybe not I do this tomorrow. Peace.